Hello to everyone out there in YouTube land, and welcome to the first video, or my first video of 2020, of the new decade in fact. And it's one that I teased at the tail end of last year, being MP-47 Hound. It's a figure I've been sort of quite eager to review, to be honest, because Hound has long been one of my favourite low-key Transformers characters, because he played quite a big part in the original 3-episode arc of More Than Meets the Eye. And the original G1 toy was one of the first that I had in my collection as well. So yeah, I've been quite excited to take a look at this guy. It seems to have quite a high level of tune accuracy, which is something that I obviously go for. So anyway, without further ado, let's take a quick look at the packaging and go from there. Obviously we've got the pretty standard Masterpiece box here. Does quite a good job of showcasing the character in both alt and robot mode. And on the side there you have, it's the Willys Jeep CJ3B, whatever that is. The back, as usual, just shows off various play features. You know, you've got some of the accessories here, a couple of pictures with other Masterpiece figures. Now, I didn't get the coin with mine. The first wave did come with a collector coin, but I had a bit of a saga with my figure actually. Originally was going to get it from a second batch, but because of Chinese New Year that would have taken me probably up until the end of February before I got it. So I opted to pay a little bit more and get one from the first batch in the end. So I've ended up paying you know, as I say, a little bit more than I wanted to. To save a few quid off of that, I didn't opt for the coin. So I don't use them. They go in a box, never to be looked at again. So, or pin as it is now. It's not even a coin anymore, is it? So anyway, that's not something I'm really that bothered about. So I elected not to have that, just to keep the cost down a little bit. Didn't knock much off, but every little bit helps. Because I originally could have had this for 99 quid from TFS Express, but I already had an order in with my regular supplier, so in the end I stuck with that one out of loyalty, but it did end up costing me best part of 20 quid more than I could have paid. But there you go, it's here now, and let's move on and take a look at some of the stuff that comes with him. You get the usual Masterpiece collector card, which they started to feel quite low quality. I mean, it's weird. It's the prices go up, the quality of the figures and the sort of accompanying cards, etc., go down. I mean, this is very, you can see this is very bendy. It doesn't feel like credit card material. It's just a thin cardboard. So yeah, I'm not terribly impressed with that. But it's obviously got its usual stuff on there, his tech specs, pictures of the figure. So, you know, seen one of those, seen them all really. We have the instruction manual, and that is, again, I don't think it's full colour, is it? Let's have a look. No, it's not full colour, but you know, does the job. And then what have we got here? I don't read Japanese, but I'm guessing this is an addendum. Just maybe some people were having issues with some part of the transformation, so this gives clarity so that you don't end up breaking the figure, perhaps. Or maybe the initial instructions weren't clear enough. But anyway, that's there for those of you who need it. Me, I'm going to watch a video from one of the other reviewers on YouTube who've already taken the plunge before I bother to do it. So anyway, here is the figure. It's still in the clamshell, and you know, I've split the tape, but I haven't taken any of it out yet. So what I'm going to do is just sort my camera setup a little bit, get myself ready, and then we'll delve right into looking at the figure itself. So if you just bear with me for a second and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we are with MP-47 out of his plastic prison, and yeah, my initial impressions when handling it were, this is ridiculously lightweight. I mean, it feels very, very plasticky. You know, considering this figure is 120 pounds-ish, it does not feel worth that in terms of materials. I mean, I know that's not the be-all end-all. You know, I'm not a massive sort of die-cast advocate. I don't like the way the paint chips on it, but when used sparingly and appropriately, it can add some heft and some solidity to figures. But I'm not hugely impressed with how this feels. You know, the plastic feels quite thin and brittle and cheap, which is something I've read and heard about on forums and videos. So I don't know. We'll see what it's like as we go on. But anyway, that's my sort of initial reaction straight out of the box. Let's while we've got him out, let's take a look at some of the sort of play features, the accessories, etc. So the first thing that I noticed is this soft top cover for the Jeep mode. I don't even recall the episode that this appeared in, but I'm sure it did. I mean, it seems like a bit of a wasted opportunity to me, because this is a pretty niche accessory. I mean, Hound has this iconic look. That's how he always really appeared in the cartoon. Obviously you can put this on if you want. I'm not going to force it on too much because I don't want to scratch the paint, so I'll just balance it there. You get the rough idea of what it looks like. Not a big fan of that look. I think that this set would have been much better served by having something like the cage that Ravage is confined to in More Than Meets the Eye, simply because that's a very iconic Hound moment. Even more so because one of the other accessories that you get with the figure is this key, which is obviously the key that Hound had on his person when he was, you know, jailing Ravage, when he sort of let him go on purpose, accidentally on purpose. So yeah, I think if they'd included some sort of cage scale with the Masterpiece Ravage, that would have been a much better idea. But you know, we got the soft top instead. But what are you going to do? We also get this petrol canister, which I am assuming affixes to the back of the alt mode. It does. There you go. So that will fit on the back there. And we also get a couple of spare wing mirrors, I guess just in case you break the ones that are already on the figure. It also includes this spare tyre here, which again I would imagine fits somewhere on the vehicle mode, like that. I'm guessing, if I've got that pinned in. I don't know if that's supposed to be in that orientation or facing down. Probably facing down, and I've put that on the. No, I think it does face up. Looking at the back of the box, it does face upwards. So yeah, so that's quite nice that you get both of those things, and then you also get this gun, alt mode gun. Doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look like the G1 toy, but I guess it does look more like the cartoon, and it's articulated. It's got quite a few hinges in it, I'm guessing for transformation, etc., but it does mean it's a bit wonky. But that can fit in here on this hinge, and can rotate, by the look of it, can rotate 360 and move up and down, so you have a few play options there. We also get this Hologram Projector Gun, sort of Hound's signature weapon from the cartoon series, along with, hopefully these will show up, a couple of alternate face sculpts. So there you have sort of a smiling face, and you also get this yelling face as well. They're not bad, to be honest. I don't know if I'd ever used the yelling face with it, but I quite like the smiling face. Hound was a bit of a friendly character. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, you get this holographic cone, which I would assume, yes, that pegs into the hologram gun. Looks a bit silly. I kind of expect a dog's head to be popping out of there. But yeah, it is what it is. You also get this holographic driver. Obviously in the series Hound was all about the holograms, and that I would imagine pops in there and scales quite nicely with him. That's one thing I will say, is that the figures, obviously Takara has changed the scale of the accompanying figures, because the usual Masterpiece scale figures are much smaller than this, and they would look stupid in this alt mode. But along with that, that holographic driver, we also get another Spike figure. Seem to be having overload of Spike figures lately, after one with MP-44 and MP-45. You get another one with MP-47, but as you can see, this one is much bigger. Has all the same articulation points. You know, you get an articulated head on a swivel there, ball jointed arms and legs, with a joint at the knee and at the, well, I say the elbow, but it's actually more like halfway down his forearm, which looks a bit silly. But also you get an ab crunch there, which is alright. No waist swivel that I can see, but you know, a bit of a swivel at the ab. The scale of this, I have to say, is a lot more in keeping with what I would want from all of the figures. The minifigures that came with MP-44 and the previous you know, MP-10, MP-22, Magnus, etc., and the newer Masterpiece, you know, MP-45 as well, sorry, they're just too small. They're scaled to work with the alt modes, so that they can sit inside the alt modes, but the robot mode scales all off. It just looks silly. They're way too small. This looks to be a much better scale all round, to be honest. I guess I'll find out when I put him in robot mode. But even looking at it this way, I mean, you know, the other minifigs, I don't have one to hand, but they would be, you know, somewhere like that on him, which is ridiculous. That would be just dwarfed by this. And obviously alt mode scales are a difficult thing, because this is, you know, this Jeep would probably not be as big as this in real life compared to a Carbot. But I don't know, I just feel that they've obviously gone bigger with this because it doesn't have a top, so you can put a bigger figure in it. But I just feel that the ones that we've got previously are way too small, and this is actually much closer to how I would expect and want my my human companions to look. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when we come to the robot mode, I'm sure. But just looking at him up close, if I can get this to focus, he's got actually reasonable definition on his features. No paint, obviously, but better that, obviously, with him being a bit bigger size, they can get slightly better sculpt work on him. Yeah, as I say, that joint at the elbow isn't at the elbow, it's more like on the forearm, which looks a bit odd. But other than that, it's pretty well painted, pretty well turned out. So yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised with that. We'll take the holographic driver out as well, put them over to one side, and then we'll take a slightly closer look at Hound himself. As you can see, I've not even removed the protective plastic from him yet. In alt mode, I think it looks pretty good. As I say, it feels pretty cheap, or very cheap in fact. But I can't argue that the look is good. I don't appear to have any major defects on mine. I've got a couple of imperfections in the paint. I've got one there and a darkish spot there, which I don't, that's like a bubble. I don't want to use my nail on that because that will probably come off and reveal unpainted surface below. I've got a couple of other bits that look like they could be paint, one sort of yellow spot behind there, which I don't know if it will show up in this light at this angle, but it's just there. Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it's no worse than the average Masterpiece figure, and it's a lot better than some of the figures in my collection, both official and third party. So on the whole, yeah, not too bothered about that. I mean, I can see a few other, yeah, I mean, that's a bit annoying. Oh, actually that came off, so I don't know where it came from, that paint, so that's probably come from somewhere else, but I can see there's some on the thigh already, and yeah, but I'm nitpicking now. I mean, on the whole, it's not a terrible example. It's obviously got some quite nice accents on the rear lights here, and the tyres painted quite well, the gun. I like the detail on the inside of the dash. I don't know if that will show up, hopefully it will. That's got some nice detail. It's well painted. You know, you've got a moulded J in the steering wheel there in the centre of the steering column. That's nice, it's a nice touch. The Tampoed Autobot faction symbols and this star, they look pretty good. So yeah, I think from a QC point of view in alt mode, it's not all that bad actually. I believe also that this compartment opens, yes it does, and in there you can see we've got well, what's masquerading as an engine block. I think on there I'm seeing slightly worse QC on the paint apps on the arms. Well, they will eventually be the arms, they'll fold out, so I hope they're not too bad. But yeah, and there's actually Hound's face there, covered over with this sort of fake engine block. You can sort of see his eyes poking out there, just about. But yeah, on the whole, you know, it's not a terrible alt mode. It just feels quite lightweight. Certainly doesn't feel like it's worth the money I've paid for it in terms of materials. But I guess a lot of this is the engineering, the license, the accessories. I mean, I still think it's overpriced, don't get me wrong. I think the Masterpiece line now is hugely overpriced. But we don't have a lot of alternatives really if we want proper cartoon accuracy. So you kind of, if you're a collector like me, you suck it up if you want that kind of aesthetic. But yeah, I don't think it looks bad in alt mode. Probably talked about this one more in alt mode than I have a lot of figures, but it's not a bad looking figure. It's just it feels like a $10 Chinese toy, if you know what I mean, sort of thing you get on eBay for your kid or whatever for that kind of sum. But yeah, well, I don't want to go on too long about the alt mode, so we'll move on to the robot mode. I'm not going to do the transformation on camera just because I've looked at various videos and read horror stories about people snapping things because of brittle plastic. So I don't want to be doing that on camera. As I say, I'm not really, this channel's not really about that. I do it every now and again if I'm comfortable, but in this case I'm not. So I'm going to do it off camera and then come back with a bot mode review and some thoughts and comparisons, etc. as usual. If you want to check out the transformation, there are plenty of reviewers out there who will do it and do a better job than I ever will. I haven't actually looked at the moment, but I usually go to MGO for my reviews. He does some pretty good transformation videos, so I'm going to check that out and see if he's got one. I haven't actually looked to see if he has at the moment, but I'll give that a look, and if not, there are a couple of other people that I'll use. I'll mention that when we're back with the robot mode review, if I have any that stick out. So anyway, yeah, bear with me for, I guess for you, a few seconds, and probably more like 30 to 60 minutes of torture for me, but I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so welcome back, and yeah, that was a lot less painful for you than it was for me. So that actually turned out to be quite an arduous transformation. I did actually use MGO's video in the end. He did have one, and as usual it was pretty well thought out, pretty concise, and well executed, so that allowed me to get through it with well, I like to say minimal hassle, but No, that's not true. There were quite a few stages during the transformation when I thought I was going to break this figure. Now that's not really due to the complexity of the transformation, it's really more to do with the quality of the materials. Now the plastic feels very cheap in hand, quite flimsy. I don't know how well I can demonstrate that on camera. I mean, picking this guy up now, he is super lightweight, there's nothing to him. And the feet are very, I mean, they're quite hollow as you can see, but there's a lot of play in bits, and I mean, you can hear that on camera. It just sounds a bit cheap and nasty. Yeah, unfortunately this is the way the Masterpiece line is going, or it appears to be. And again, I'm not saying that every figure needs die cast, because I don't believe that, but the quality of the plastic here is not good enough. You know, if this was a third party, people would be slagging it off, saying it's rubbish and inferior to Takara products, etc. Well, this is an official Takara product, and a very expensive one at that, when you really take into consideration everything you get with it and the quality. So yeah, I am disappointed with that, I have to say. I did get through the transformation without any breakages or stresses that I can see. I don't think I'm going to be transforming it back to alt mode really, because I'm a guy who displays in bot mode, as anyone who watches my channel will know. So hopefully I've got away with it, hopefully, but I guess time will tell. Anyway, that's enough of the first impressions about the bot mode. You know, flimsiness and finicky transformation aside, I really like the way this figure looks. It looks like it jumped off the screen. I mean, it really does look great. It's very toon accurate. I mean, there are obviously things that aren't, and I'll cover those in a second. But for the things that are, I mean, the silhouette is great. Just looks like Hound. I mean, I love the legs, really do look great. I love the way they managed to get rid of the Jeep wheels and have the faux wheels on the side there, like he does in the Toon. It's just a small detail, but it's a great bit of engineering to get that. I like the fact he has his largely accurate colourings, markings, whatever you want to call them. I like that he's very slim, doesn't have much of a backpack, which is great, and he's also very clean from the back as well. Let's see if I can move this camera a bit. It seems to have wandered. It's not as good as it could be. Apologies for this. That's a bit better in terms of the height now. There we go. We'll see how that looks. Yep, that's better. You know, there are even relatively few screw holes on it. You know, I've seen a lot worse from both official MP and third-party figures. That is a very clean back. A lot of it's hidden as well by this piece. Even the steering wheel there, which does obviously jut out, isn't really that obvious and that distracting. And yeah, I mean, I just think it looks pretty good all round. I mean, the bit that I was alluding to that I don't really like, obviously, is this. I'm not a fan of this whole head assembly, the floating head, which just sort of sits on there. But it's not that bad. I mean, for the engineering they've done to get it to look the way it does, I can see why it went like this, and it's not terrible. So I'm not going to, you know, throw my toys out of my pram for that. I think it looks quite good. Overall, when you look at it from the front, you don't really see that armature. Obviously, you see it for the rocket launcher on the side there, but yeah, that just looks like it's part of the figure. Really, it's only when you look at it from the back that you realise it's part of this entire assembly, and it looks a bit odd. But I don't think it's that bad. Certainly not as bad as I'd been led to believe from people who had already received the figure. I'll just let you get a little bit of a look at him at the moment. you can take in his cartoony goodness. And what I wanted to do was bring in the Spike figure and just show you the scale. And now I don't know about you, but I think that's a much better scale for human figures than what we get with the other MP figures. You know, they're giant robots, and they're supposed to be a lot bigger than humans, but they're not supposed to be as big as they look in the current MP lineup, where the humans are minuscule. You know, these are supposed to be, I think some of the biggest ones are 30, 40 feet tall. You know, your Primes, Megatrons, etc. They're not supposed to be as big relatively to the human characters. So I really like this scale of figure. So much so, in fact, that, you know, if Takara were to release a pack of, say, a Spike, Sparkplug, Carly, Chip, maybe a Dr. Arkaville, and a future Spike and Daniel from the movie, I would be very happy to pay a reasonable sum for that. I think it would be something that's worth having. I like this aesthetic. I think it would really suit the MP line for people who display in bot mode. So I mean, Takara aren't really, you know, one to miss a trick, so perhaps they will do that. Maybe this was a sort of way to test the waters. I mean, I know they ostensibly it's because the smaller figures would not have scaled with the alt mode in any way, shape or form, but the fact that this scales, you know, so much better in bot mode can't be overlooked. So I would hope that they would consider or give some consideration to releasing figures in this scale as a add-on pack. Anyway, I'll move him out of the way for a second, and let's do a quick articulation checklist on Hound. So it's actually got quite a good level of articulation. It was a nightmare getting things into place because things felt like they were going to break, and they do feel like they're going to pop out, but you get a reasonable range of motion there on the shoulder. You can go all the way up and beyond the horizontal, almost vertical in fact. You can't quite go 360 because he hits that mirror there, but you know, you can get near as damn it. If you move it out like that, you can get a 360. You just have to move it out a bit so it's not quite straight. You know, you have him like that, but you can get the movement on it should you want it. He has an upper swivel there at the shoulder, along with a swivel at the elbow there, and a nice deep elbow bend, which gets you more than 90. Again, you have to bring the arm out for that really. You can't really have it, you know, you've got to play around with it at both joints to get it there, but it's not bad. It doesn't look unsightly or silly, which is good. You get a butterfly joint here, so you can get the arm quite far up, across the chest. It looks stupid, so it's not something I would employ really, but it is there. You know, I'm sure you could cheat certain angles for that if you wanted to, so it didn't look quite as silly as it does in this demonstration. But yeah, it's I guess it's there if you want it. The hands are your usual Masterpiece fare. They have a bit of an outward movement on them, and again they're the usual pinned 3 fingers, an independent 4-finger setup, and a solid thumb. Well, I say solid. It moves at the very base to be wider, but there's no individual articulation on the joint, the knuckle. It's got the usual Masterpiece style grip in there, and it doesn't look to be at first glance the same as MP-45, where it, you know, you have to have the hand in a certain position to get the groove to reveal itself. It looks like the older style where it just plugs in like that, and then you close the hand around it. He says, not doing a very good job of that. Yeah, so that sort of seems to be going back to the older style, which is better really. It's easier to plug it in. I mean, the gun's comically short, but we all know that was an interpretation error of the artwork, a perspective issue. But it still looks even a little bit too short for that. I mean, it's very stubby. I haven't really watched the toon or an episode of the toon with Hound in it for a while now, so I can't really comment on whether it is accurate to the screen off the top of my head. I put obviously a brief graphic of him in the opening credits for this review, so I will do. I haven't done it yet, which is why I haven't seen it, but that will probably refresh my memory and it will allow you to compare it. So that's the arms covered. It's pretty good articulation on the arms there. The legs, you have hip skirts here. You can go pretty much all the way out, not quite horizontal, but not far off. There is an upper thigh rotation. I've got some paint rub already, brilliant. That's no doubt from the grey plastic there. I mean, it's not too bad, so I'm going to try not to focus on that. It has the sort of newer style Masterpiece hip skirts here, so when you move the leg, the skirt moves with them, which is quite nice, and you can get above the horizontal there for a good range of motion. It doesn't have any backwards movement really, in fact none. You know, you can kind of cheat it a little bit, but I wouldn't force that if I were you. It does have a nice deep knee bend. Not the deepest I've seen, but you know, it gets you to there. And the ankles are pretty good as well. You've got a good range of motion on the ankles, a nice tilt in there. Not much out, but that would be anatomically correct to a human foot anyway. If you try turning your ankle more that way, anyone who's ever done that by accident will tell you you're not supposed to. It has a good range of motion, toe tilt there and there, and due to the transformation it can actually pop up a bit further, so you can pull this down on the hinge for more if you need to. I mean, it's not designed to be like that, it's designed to be up like that, I'm sure, but you have that option should you need it. It allows you to get some pretty good poses. You can get some quite wide stances on it with the feet like that. You can do pretty good convincing splits there. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty good range of motion on that. I would imagine you could get some quite dynamic poses out of this guy. I haven't tried yet, obviously, but it looks like you could. He also has a waist swivel. Pretty good one. You can go all the way around on it. And the now common ab crunch. And that's reasonable. You know, you can get down to there. It doesn't really break the sculpt that much either because of this piece here. So it looks like it's one contiguous piece rather than a big gap there, which you get with some ab crunches. So I like that. That's good. And moving up, we come to the head. Now the head is on a ball, and you actually you have to, during transformation, you have to hold the piece it's attached to and wiggle it to make the neck appear. Once it does that, it's got, you've got the quizzical dog look there. You can look up and down, which is good. It does have a tendency to separate from the body when you do that though, which looks a bit silly. But other than that, it's got a reasonable range of motion on it. And I quite like his neutral face as well. I don't know how well that shows up on camera. I'll bring it a bit closer if I can. Put my hand behind. Probably brought it too close now, sorry. Yeah, it's not bad. It's a pretty good Hound likeness. And obviously the missile is on a hinge as well, so you've got a few options for that. You can have it posed a few different ways. And I do quite like that solution. I mean, it's it's annoying that it's multiple pieces. It does break up the sculpt a bit, but it doesn't look too bad. And as I said, it's so freaking toon accurate that I can kind of forgive these minor things on account of how much it appeals to my aesthetic sensibilities. So yeah, I mean, I think overall it looks really good. It still feels quite fragile. But it does have a good range of motion, which is a good thing. Some nice articulation. I believe you can do obviously a few things with it in robot mode beyond what I've already demonstrated. You can obviously plug this cone in, so you've got that hologram projector there, and that, you know, I guess that looks slightly less ridiculous from some angles than it does from side angle. As I say, I still picture a dog popping out of that. It's, you know, I'm not going to change the faces, we've already showed them off. I quite like this sort of stock neutral face actually. I mean, the only other one that I think I'd probably go for would be the sort of smiling face. I don't really go much for the yelling face on this guy. I believe as well with this piece, yep, there's a thing in here that can be used. It's got the Masterpiece style grip, so you can have him, I can just see if I can demonstrate quickly. Depends how much a pain in the arse it is to do it. Let's have a look. Excuse my ham-fistedness. Yeah, I mean that will go in there, but getting his fingers wrapped around it might be a challenge. But essentially he can hold this as a Riot Shield. I'm going to cheat and just hold it there so you get an idea, because I can't be bothered to spend the time getting it pegged in for something I'm never going to use. I mean, I don't really like this. I think it's stupid. I mean, what sort of protection is a soft top going to give him? I mean, yeah, it's a playability feature, but yeah, it's a silly one. The key, I can't see anywhere obvious that the key can store, like he doesn't have a little latch or a catch or anything that you can put it on. Well, I've got a bit of paint rub there, that's annoying because it's better on that side than it is on that side, but I suppose it's not terrible. But yeah, I can't see anywhere for the key, which is a bit of a missed opportunity, to be honest. But there is one other thing that he can do from memory, and that is if you separate the head like this, and then again I'm sure my fingers will have issues with this because I don't have any nails at the moment. Oh, come on. Come on, boy. No. I should probably have used put a spudger in with me for this, shouldn't I? See if I can use this instead. There we go. I would edit this out, but it seems pointless, to be honest. There we go. We've now got the face mask that he had in the More Than Meets the Eye episode, the one where he's doing questionable things to Spike from behind. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't look, it doesn't look anything special, but it's a nice thing to have. Again, it's another nod to the cartoon, and it stows pretty easy. Well, as I say, it annoys me every time I lift it up. His whole head assembly comes up with him, but there you go. One complaint I've seen before is that he has a big gap between his head because of that gimmick. And yeah, it's true, there is a bit of a seam there, but I don't think it's terrible. I mean, I've seen worse on figures. I mean, I suppose it is more noticeable at the front. From when you're looking at it from that angle, you can kind of see under there. But when you're looking at him head on, it's not hugely apparent. So I'm not going to get my knickers in a twist about that. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of everything that you get with him. And I think it's a nice little selection of accessories, to be honest. Okay, hopefully that's given you a good overview of the figure, and you've had a chance to take him in all of his toon glory. What I'm going to do now is the usual set of comparisons. I'll bring in a few Masterpiece scale figures just so we can see how he stacks up to some of the more recent releases, along with a Carbot for size comparison. So just bear with me for a short while and I'll be right back with that. Okay, and here we are, we're back with MP-47 and what is it, MP-19 plus Prowl. Just to give you an idea of how he scales with one of the other Masterpiece Carbot figures. Obviously it's the plus line, so the aesthetic's pretty similar. And yeah, I don't think he looks too bad, to be honest. Obviously I've got Prowl in a bit of a crouching pose there. and it's obviously the engineering on this guy is quite outdated now, but I still think they hold up. Actually, the Nissans, they don't look too bad, the Datsun Bros. But yeah, they would be pretty comparable in height, I think, if he was stood up straight. I think aesthetically they work very well. I'll move him slightly over to one side a moment because I want to bring in a newer figure. Here he is with the recently released MP-45. Again, he's slightly crouched, but you can sort of see the scale there. I mean, as I've said, I think this figure's too tall. Only maybe by half a head or so, but definitely too tall. But it looks, yeah, I mean, next to him, he looks pretty good. I swear, every time I look at this figure, I see another flaw on it. I've noticed I've got a ding on the crest as well now. God, for the money this thing cost me, it's ridiculous. Almost as much as that. Anyway, I digress. But yeah, I think aesthetically they work really well together. They look like they've come out of the same line. Whereas the MP-21, the old B, just didn't fit. It fit with the old aesthetic of MP-10 and figures of that ilk, MP-12, you know, Sideswipe, etc. But with the new sort of super tune accurate trend, this B is a better fit. Issues aside, you know, obviously, you know, it does have a lot of problems. Let's bring in the big boy as well now, the leader, Optimus. I'll just move these guys a little bit out of the way so I can get him in. Again, he's crouched down, so scale wise, you know, you're not looking for height here, but it's more of an aesthetic comparison. This, I'll just put B on the side there. I think that's a pretty good looking toon lineup now. You know, as I say, I'm really into the toon aesthetic because more so because I was a Marvel Comics fan, and obviously the character models were used as the basis for the artwork in that. Not so much at the beginning when it was all over the place and they were using a mix of toy and animation model, but as it went on they definitely settled into the animation aesthetic, albeit with some colour differences. But yeah, that's where my love comes from, and I love the look of the characters in the show. I just, you know, obviously the show was aimed at quite young kids, and by the time I was really into Transformers, I was, you know, getting on for what, 8, 9. Yeah, I kind of gravitated towards the more adult themes in the comic. But I really like the way these guys look together. I still think MP-44's got a lot of issues, but I'm not going to, you know, flog that dead horse anymore. From this angle, the reason I've got him posed like this is because I think he looks pretty damn good when he's in this kind of pose. When you're not really focusing on the back or all the gaps or kibble elsewhere. He looks really nice in this pose, and he really does look good next to his sort of Autobot brethren here. So yeah, I think Hound sort of falls in line nicely. He's a really nice looking bot. What I do want to do, one last thing before I sort of move on to my final thoughts, is I'll take these guys out and I want to bring in the character that I mentioned at the sort of top of the review. The one that's been my Hound stand-in for quite some time now. And that's this guy, Fans Toys Willis. And yeah, there you can see the difference in aesthetics. I really like this. I do think it's a really nice figure. I mean, it's a hell of a lot heftier than this. I mean, sure, it's, you know, even the plastic, you can hear that sounds a lot more flimsy and, you know, hollow. That's a lot sturdier. And obviously it has some die cast in the feet, which give it a little bit more weight. Causes its own set of issues, which I'll cover in a second. But yeah, overall, this feels like a better quality figure, but this wins hands down aesthetically for me. You know, some of the stuff I don't like about this guy, I mean, obviously the colours are sort of, well, they're not subjective if you're a toon fan, but preference is subjective with that, I guess. Like, you know, if you like the silver, this has got that. But yeah, the missiles, you know, it's too close to the head and too big and doesn't articulate as well. The head itself, the shape's not quite right. I've got the alternate head with the white face on, which I prefer to the silver, but again, it's not great. It's got incorrect sort of colourings. It doesn't have moving hip skirts, so that limits articulation. This articulation isn't that great in general, to be honest. And the worst thing of all is these feet here from the side. I mean, it's, you know, just compare that to the new Hound and the profile. It's just terrible. I mean, look, they haven't even really hidden the wheels. They're just sort of there. On the back, it's just no contest at all, really. I get this is an older figure, but it's not that old, really. And obviously there was a major problem with these this figure, in that this piece would break because of the weight of the die cast. It's not a very good solution. It's held in with a screw rather than being anything sturdier, and over time it loosens and sometimes snaps entirely. In fact, the reason I got this figure was because I got it at its height of its popularity when it was sold out, and it was kind of going for silly money. But I only paid something like £80 odd for that, because I bought it from eBay from a listing that said it was broken, with the very fault that I've just described. And I thought, I'll take a gamble on it, I'll take a punt, see how it pans out. And you know, I could see the price was going up as I was bidding on it, and I was like, well, if it gets much higher, you know, it's probably too big a gamble. But luckily, as I said, I got it for just over 80 quid. And when it arrived, all that was wrong was that the screw needed tightening. It wasn't broken or anything, so the seller's misfortune was my gain in that case, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's a nice figure. I like it. It's a really good interpretation of Hound, but that's what it is, an interpretation. Whereas this feels like the character that I know and love from the Toon and the Marvel comics. So scale-wise, actually, I'm surprised, because I always thought Willis was a little bit too tall. I know he's crouching there again, but if I stood him up straight, he probably would be a little bit taller, but not much taller. So yeah, Hound is a little bit taller than I was expecting, but there's not a lot in it, to be honest. Yeah, as you can see, Hound MP-47 Hound is just a lot sleeker, a lot more stylized. And this isn't a bad figure by any means, as I've said a number of times now, but I'm sure there are people out there that prefer this look, and more power to you if that's what you like. But you know, I prefer this guy looks-wise. Aesthetically, there's no competition, but I will concede that Willis feels like it's the better quality toy, the sort of better figure overall. From a materials point of view anyway. Maybe not construction, because of the issues it had with the breakages and things like that, and some of the limited articulation, but definitely if you were to pick them up, if you gave them to a layman, you know, somebody who's not that interested in Transformers, and said which is better, I reckon they would pick this, purely because of the way it feels. Anyway, that's by the by now. I mean, I got this because I love Toon characters. I will keep this one. I've never put it in alt mode, actually, so I will probably transform it into alt mode and have it with my duplicates. Some of the other figures I've replaced recently, like MP-18, MP-19, MP-21, my duplicate boost, and I'll have him. Oh yeah, also my MMC Mirage, because no one seems to want to buy my first edition Sphinx. So I think I'll probably just display him in alt mode as well, along with Willis. And I think that this, you know, these guys have quite realistic alt modes, so they'll look good. I'll have a more realistic alt mode Brigade, along with a Toon aesthetic robot mode sort of detail for display cabinet. So best of both worlds. But yeah, I've never transformed this because I've heard it's a nightmare, but I'll probably give that a go. Definitely not on camera. And yeah, I'll enjoy that for its alt mode. Anyway, give me a couple of seconds to adjust, and I'll be back with some final thoughts. Okay, so as usual, this has been a fairly lengthy review, mainly because of my waffling. But on balance, I think this is a really nice looking figure with questionable materials, shall we say. I don't think it's worth the asking price, but then I thought that of the last 3 at least MP releases I've bought. I really like the way it looks. I just don't think that the quality of the materials or the accessories justify the asking price. But I can only see it getting worse, to be honest. You know, what with the UK pressing on with Brexit, I don't think the pound's going to be getting stronger anytime soon. So we're probably going to end up paying more for these figures as collectors over here. Yeah, I mean, I'll continue to buy them as long as they look good in robot mode. As I say, I put things on the shelf and pose them and then pretty much just leave them. I might go back and tinker every now and again and change up the display, but I'm not constantly fiddling and playing with the figures. So I run less of a risk of breaking them than a lot of people might do. That's probably why more people report breakages with figures on forums than I've experienced. Most of my issues are actually out of the box when I have defective figures out of the box. I'm actually happy to say that Hound, in that respect, is better than both MP-44 and MP-45, both of which had defects out of the box. MP-44 more serious defects. This one doesn't have any, really. I mean, it has the usual paint app variances that you get with every figure. Prowl at the back there, you know, I've got over it now, but when I got him I was quite disappointed that he had a few speckles on him and some sort of a burr in the plastic and a few other bits, but from this distance you just don't even see it now, and I'd kind of forgotten it until I picked him up a little while ago. Yeah, Hound, you know, has a few little things but nothing major, and I got through the transformation unscathed, so he'll look really good on the shelf next to the rest of my season 1 ARC collection, my More Than Meets the Eye collection. So yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with him in hand, with the aforementioned caveats. As to whether he's worth it if you already own Willis, I think that would probably be very much down to your aesthetic preferences. If you're like me and you're full-on toon nut, then yeah, it's definitely worth the upgrade, side grade, whatever you want to call it. But if you're not, then yeah, you're probably best off just, you know, sticking with Willis, to be honest. It's you know, that's not to sort of say that it's a bad figure. As I've said, it's just that you know, there's not enough that this offers over Willis unless you're a hardcore toon enthusiast, for my money. But yeah, it's not a bad figure. I don't think it's worth 120 quid. But I'm glad I own it. I think 20 quid less and I would have been even happier. But you know, I made my bed there, so had to lie in it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed looking at Hound. I know this is a little bit late compared to some of the other reviewers who've got their figures earlier in America, but we don't have that luxury over here, I'm afraid. We get things pretty late. Yeah, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my ramblings on the figure, and it's given you a bit of a clarification on some of the pros and cons. And it's always nice to sort of have them set up like this as well, so you can get a sense of scale, I feel. But anyway, I'm not quite sure what my next figure is going to be, actually. There's not much on the horizon, obviously what with Chinese New Year. And then I think the next 2 things that I definitely want to get are the Make Toys cone heads, if they do come out. But then there are some other X-Transbots things coming out that I'm looking at. I want their Cup and their Springer, but they're probably going to be sort of later in the year, if not halfway through the year. I quite like the look of their Dr. Egg, or whatever it's called now, their Quintesson Judge, so I might get that to go with my movie display. But yeah, this is the first time in a while, actually, that I really don't know what my next figure is going to be. So I might not actually have any new reviews for a while, unless something from the third-party world piques my interest. So yeah, if you're looking at the channel, if you're subscribed, I'll probably be doing a few collection updates, maybe revisiting some of the older figures in my collection and doing reviews for those. or maybe even trying some new content, just discussions of some other things I like, some Transformers fandom stuff like the Marvel comics, etc., the movie, a few other bits and pieces. Who knows? It depends what I've got time for and energy for. But anyway, until that time, all that remains for me to say is thanks for watching, and if you have subscribed again, I've had a few new subscribers since the new year, since Christmas, so thanks to you guys, and thanks to everyone else for watching as well, and take care everyone, and I'll catch you again in the next video.